All right. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen. This is sponsored by Seller Labs. I am super excited to have Seth Greene here. Seth, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
It is an honor to be here. I am a fan of the show and super excited to get to be on as a guest.
Awesome. Seth, we're going to open it up with our basic question that we asked all of our guests. Why would an e-commerce seller who's considering monetizing his or her mental capital be interested in hearing from you?
Because we do it every day. We monetize our ideas and our clients' ideas and turn them into digital products, courses, membership sites, things that create a monetizable following. I've also written 9 best-selling books on direct response marketing. We're on the Inc. fastest growing privately held companies list. I've been nominated by Dan Kennedy and Russell Brunson for Marketer of the Year 3 years in a row. And I co-host a Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, which is also the monetization of a idea.
Seth, that's a pretty impressive resume from the standpoint of oh, and by the way, you dropped some names there of people who I actually respect greatly in the industry, especially for monetization of mental capital. The idea of writing a book is definitely on my realm of things that I want to do one day. I have mental capital that I've put out there. So we may come back to the book thing because we actually have not dug into the idea of monetizing mental capital in a book form here on this podcast. So we may circle back to that one here in a minute. I'm going to ask you the next question I love to ask. I think you've definitely hooked some listeners there with that intro. Tell me, when is the first time you can remember monetizing mental capital? So I want you to go way back here. So we're getting in the time machine and we're kind of evaluating Seth's life. For my daughter, it would be, $120 on the street corner doing lemonade. She literally did $120 one day on the street corner. Now, granted, she had 2 or 3 people that paid her like $20 for a thing of lemonade because the girl is so charming. It's ridiculous. She's really selling charm and not lemonade. What was the first time you can remember monetizing mental capital? And when you're that young, she's obviously got some lemonade she's selling there. So there's a physical part of that. But anytime you can remember earning $1 early in your life.
All right. So had a paper out, but that wasn't it was my idea to go get it, but it already existed. I saw an infomercial for the Specialty Merchandise Corporation that was going to sell me this box, this kit, and allow me to buy physical product that you would find in a hotel gift shop at wholesale. I somehow was able to convince my parents to loan me the money to let me do that, and then sold those products door to door until my dad had to threaten legal action and tell SMC that I was a minor because I did not read the fine print in the contract and realize you had to buy a certain amount of volume every month. And as 13 or however old I was, I had no way to buy that much volume. And he had to threaten to sue them to get me out of the contract.
Hold on, we got to go into that one a little bit. What amount of money did you convince your parents to loan you at this point?
So to buy the kit that was on the infomercial, I think might have been a couple $100.
Couple $100. Okay.
And then when I got it and sent back the paperwork saying, yes, I want to start my SMC retail business, I did not know that I didn't read the fine print. I was just a kid. I was excited. Did not know that they were going to expect me to be buying thousands of dollars of product a month. So
they'd send you another kit every month and you just sell what was in the kit.
I thought I could just buy one I could buy the set of knives. I could buy the snow globe. I could buy one thing or 2 things at a time and sell it. That was not the case. My next one, your listeners are old enough to remember the Columbia House, record and tape club,
okay,
where they had the greatest irresistible free offer ever, which was 9 tapes for a penny. Okay. And then you had to commit to buying 6 to 8 at their regular overinflated prices over the next 2 years.
Okay.
I went through my baseball card collection and I made up fake people. So I took Daryl Strawberry and Don Mattingly, and it was Daryl Mattingly and Don Strawberry. And I joined 15 times. And they apparently thought we were an apartment building, what we lived in. And so I had to get home every day before my mom would get the mail to get why are there all these boxes of tapes every day? And I think I picked up probably 100, 150 tapes, sold them at school, made money, and then ran into the issue of, oh crap, I now have 15 memberships and they expect me to buy 10 more of these things at retail overinflated prices. And I now have to buy 150 of these things and don't have the money. So it took me a couple attempts at Monetizing Mental Capital before I realized you should probably read all the fine print before you sign.
Okay, so I love this. My daughter comes to me. So I've got a young entrepreneur at home. She comes to me the other night and she says, Dad, I was looking on Pinterest for something that I could make because she's got a neighbor just down the street who makes hair gel and she puts glitter in it and food coloring to make different hair pastes that you can put in your hair.
I did not know I would want glitter in my hair, but okay.
Hey, it's a thing. She's 10.
Okay.
Especially when they do.
I'm surprised my 11-year-old hasn't caught on to that yet.
Stand by. They're probably going to listen to this episode and you'll be all over it. But they'll like put red, white, and blue streaks in their hair with the hair gel. And that's what she sells. She has little containers of hair gel. And she was on Pinterest. She stole my wife's phone. Well, asked for my wife's
Borrowed it. Yeah.
Borrowed. Yeah. Well, it feels like stealing sometimes because they just keep it forever. But borrowed my wife's phone, was on Pinterest, found that you could make chapstick. She then borrowed my laptop and went all over Amazon and found all the ingredients that you had to do, totaled it all up, and was like, okay, I have $50. I need 40. Dad, will you loan me the money? So it sounds just like, you asking your parents, Dad, will you loan me the money to buy this, like beeswax and several other things to get this stuff rolling? And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I actually had her write up a contract. Like, go get a piece of paper, write out how much money you want, by when are you going to pay it back? And she's like, okay, here you go. I said, no, what are the consequences if you don't pay it back? And she was like, and I said, do you have any collateral?
Oh my God.
And she was like, no. And I was like, I mean, you have that Polaroid camera we bought for you for your birthday. It's worth $50. And she was like, you mean like I'd have to give that back if I can't pay it back? And I was like, I mean, that's how a loan works. And she was like, okay, I'm in. And she wrote into the contract, I'll give you my camera if I can't pay this back. And then my wife was like, well, let's give her a way to actually earn it back. So if you take over dishes for the rest of, like, each night you take over dishes, you can earn $3 off your loan or something like that. And we didn't really do interest or anything like that, but we actually had a full-blown contract. She signed it and the whole bit. She comes up to me the other day and she goes, Dad, how much do I owe you? And I was like, I don't know, find the contract. And she was like, I'm pretty sure it's like $40. I just checked with Mom and I'm pretty sure it's $40. She hands me $40 from babysitting and other stuff that she had done. And she's like, I'm done with this thing. I don't owe you any money. So she like paid it off beforehand, still has all the stuff to make all the beeswax. But it just surprised me, that entrepreneurial grit to kind of lean in and see where that's going. So I love that you, same way, have a resource. My parents have access to cash and I'm going to go figure out what some of that looks like. So Seth, eventually you figured out it's time to read the small print.
Yes, absolutely.
And is the reading of that small print what kind of helped you get to the place where you feel like you understood, how to actually successfully monetize mental capital? Let's talk about that first venture where the small print was in a better format and worked the way you wanted it to.
I have always been an entrepreneur, whether it was an attempt to, because I saw some ad in a magazine or on TV for a get-rich-quick scheme as a kid and tried it, or it's talking about starting businesses later in my life that turned out to be much more successful. I think it's that desire for gratification. I think it's that desire, that ambition, that desire to make something on my own that kind of fuels all of that.
So a desire to make something on your own. I love that. So get rich quick, make something on your own. Would you say it was more of the independent side that was driving you? I mean, think back to that 13-year-old. You said it was 13, right? That first time you were out there?
Yes.
Okay. So thinking back to him, what was it, that independence? Like, I mean, at this point, I remember when I was 13, I really wanted some more independence. I felt like that's one thing I didn't get a lot of. I think that's where teenagers come up with this angst that they walk around with. I'm actually terrified of that. You said you have an 11-year-old. I got a 10-year-old. Do you have older kids as well?
I have 17, 15, and 11.
17, 15, and 11. So you are squarely you've got some teenagers there. Is that, do you think, what was driving you?
I think my parents were in middle school. They were, I'd say, lower middle class. I saw friends whose parents, had more resources than mine, like I remember running over to a kid's house and all the kids coming in the neighborhood because he had the first big screen TV. I remember a kid down the street from us getting Air Jordans when they first came out. And my dad was, I'm not spending $130 on sneakers. That's ridiculous. And you could get them for $20 at JCPenney or whatever it was, or Foot Locker.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was champagne taste back then, but let's say champagne taste on a beer budget, and wanted more and knew my parents couldn't or wouldn't give it to me and wanted to find some other way.
It's interesting that you say it that way, because I too have had that experience where another friend picked up the coolest new item and it really was like, oh, wow, that'd be so cool to be one of those first movers and looking at some of that stuff for what's there. As you have continued, so comparing that, because I think that's where a lot of people start out, is in this, I want to be that prestige, that, first mover, that's where that champagne taste, so to speak. Would you say that's continued to be what's motivated you to monetize mental capital?
I spent a number of years working having my own book of business inside of a Fortune 500 company. I hated the bureaucracy. I hated the sales prevention department that thought their job was to say no to every idea I had. So in 2007, went independent, started my own multiple companies at the same time, and haven't looked back. And I would say there's the freedom to do what I want, run the business how I see fit, come up with the ideas that I want, and there's nothing standing in the way of that. I would say that, and obviously providing for not only my family, but all of the employees who work here and all of the clients that we serve is probably prime motivation now, along with the ripple effect of all the people we get to reach by the clients we get to serve and help grow their businesses.
So, okay, I love what you said there. I think that even those who are not in corporate America have a sales prevention department, and sometimes it's up here, right? That's saying no to all, or it's someone in their life that they're going to. They're hearing that naysay over and over and over again. What was it that finally made you be like, you know what? This income stream is great at the Fortune 500. That's working for my champagne taste stuff, but I am ready to break free. What was it that you think got you over the hump of wanting to lean in and start that new idea?
I know exactly when it was. I had started learning direct response marketing from Dan Kennedy as a student, buying books, courses, etc., and had borrowed more than I convinced my wife after 30 days of nagging to let me borrow more than our house to go work with Dan, which I did. And the very first trying to get our marketing campaigns that Dan and I created through compliance was a nightmare. It took 3 months to get the first one out the door. At this time, there was a roadshow at that Fortune 500 going around to every office in the country talking about the new national branding campaign they had launched. The company was A.G. Edwards. The branding campaign was roll over your nest egg. A.G. Edwards is the home for your nest egg. They had billions of dollars on TV commercials and print ads in the Wall Street Journal and everywhere else. And the VP of marketing, whose baby this was, gave his little presentation to all of us at our office where we had like 50 advisors in that office. And I raised my hand and said, hey, I'm a shareholder. We spent $1 billion of my money. What's the ROI on this marketing campaign? And he said, we don't have any way to track that. And I said, you couldn't have driven all of the ads to a central 800 number. You couldn't have had a tracking code. You couldn't have done any of these things. He said, no. We have anecdotal evidence. Focus groups are recognizing the logo. Receptionists are saying, hey, we got a phone call about the Nest Egg campaign, but no, we don't have any way to track that. And I said, oh my God, I have to go start my own, not out loud. I said, I need to get out of here and go start my own company. This is not the place for me. Even if I get some of this stuff approved and through compliance, I am still going to have all kinds of problems. I need to go start my own company to where I can do what I want.
I've seen gaps like that where I'm familiar with a piece of technology. And I think in your situation, like there's some common sense things here that are not lining up, definitely can help us measure that direct response. And you're familiar with them. I found that some of the reason why people aren't willing to do that kind of stuff is just the laggard, like understanding of the world and if I start measuring that, well, then I'm accountable to that. And, all of my clients will ask for that. And then what if it's not working and they fail, right? Like there's this like mentality. We had Chad Rubin on the podcast. He's pretty popular in the e-commerce space. And one of the things he says is look for a market where everybody assumes one thing and then go challenge that assumption. He's like, that's how you build companies and different pieces and identify those different gaps where you can grow something. Would you say similarly? Did you go out to build another company that actually did all of that tracking? Or what was it that you actually went out and started on your own after you saw that there were people out there that weren't doing what you felt like needed to be done?
Yes. So I went looking for a year for a independent financial services broker dealer. My goal was I wasn't going independent because it would immediately double my net income. And that's what all the recruiters were selling. I said, I want a direct line to your head of compliance, and I want their job to be find a way to say yes to what Seth wants to do and just keep him out of jail, out of FINRA jail. It's not real jail. So I found one. I got permission to do what I wanted, and it took off.
Interesting. I think there's something there about the drive. So as you looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to figure out another way. You began to call other options. You began to look at those other pieces of what was there, and you assessed those risks and then found someone else to overcome what's there. I find that sometimes when I've got a new idea, I sit on it. Like the new idea comes in, I know there's a market there. I'm just so busy focused on the comfortable part of staying where I am or another idea that I'm already working on. How do you assess, whether I should stick with what I've got or continue, take that risk?
So I'm a little anal, and I have a spreadsheet that is my decision matrix where every idea gets rated on like 7 or 8 different categories on a score of 0 to 10. And then it calculates obviously the total. And then I simply go down the list, sort by highest point total to lowest, start at the top, schedule it because otherwise it won't get done. Schedule time, keep scheduling time until it and plan until it's done, and then go to work on the next one.
And those ideas that are in that spreadsheet, are they like new ideas for new things that you want to start, like new ventures? They could be new departments. Like tell me what do the rows represent?
All of the above. Well, the column of what is the idea could be anything from, hey, I want to buy this software program that'll let us do X, Y, and Z, and maybe that'll work for us. Maybe that'll work for clients. It might be an idea for a marketing campaign. It might be an idea for a new product or service. And then some of the columns across the rows across the top in terms of how they get rated is like speed of implementation. How fast can we get it done? How much time will it take to get it done? What is the potential return on investment that we think this will generate? What is the level of stress that it will take to get it done and keep it going? And then there's 5 or 6 others to figure out what is our total point score and which one should we do first.
So you mentioned several that I feel like are on my list of like when I'm rating something. I love that you actually have an anal spreadsheet where you're keeping track of it. I think that's freaking awesome. I've even done that before where one column, like give that column double points or something like that to like, inflate the score a little bit for whatever category that I feel like is more important. On that list, if you're scanning across it real quick on your computer or taking a peek, any of those 8 categories are off the top of your head that are popping in and you're thinking, man, I think this is one that people maybe aren't considering in the 1 to 10 scores. You mentioned 4 or 5 that I feel like I've got on my list. I was curious if there are any that you've come across for helping you score ideas that maybe others hadn't thought of.
I don't know. I've never compared ideation scoring notes with other people. So I don't know if I've got the best version ever or if someone else has one and would show me theirs. And I go, oh my God, I never thought of those 7 ways to rate an idea. I don't think it's rocket science, but nothing jumps to mind as I bet you no one's ever thought of this. I bet I would negatively insult myself and say, I wonder what else other people have got.
Interesting. So it sounds like your 7 or so different pieces that are there are more around the realm of like risk versus reward, time input, some of those different sides of things. And I love that you're arbitrarily scoring each one on that 1 to 10. I want to ask you this question because I was actually just messing around with this. I'm speaking at a conference here in 2 months at a wholesaler conference for Amazon sellers on delegation. And I was getting in the car yesterday because I'm always hustling. I always got something. I'm hustling because I have a $2,000 lens for a Canon camera that I had rented to somebody. There's this platform here in Utah called Utilize where I can rent random items in my house to people. and somebody contacted me and said, hey, yeah, I want to rent that lens. So I had 15 minutes to drive there and 15 minutes to come back. And I had not yet planned what I'm going to speak on. I'd given the title, the talk isn't for another 2 months. Well, I jump in the car and I turned on ChatGPT 4.0 and I'm having a voice conversation with it. So it's like I have a phone conversation going on with Data from Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going back and forth with the AI talking about my topic. And I opened it up with, who do you feel are the greatest delegation experts of all time? And it listed off Stephen R. Covey and several other people. It did not include Dan Martell from Buy Back Your Time,
I know Dan.
which I was totally floored. Like, how are we not including Dan? Anyway, so I asked it to include Dan. And then I actually did something kind of interesting. I said, all right, AI, I would like you to create 2 columns, put all of these guys into a table, and I want you to rate them on how well they may know or understand e-commerce, like e-commerce and Amazon. So it goes through and scores all of them. I said, okay, now rank them in order based on who scored the best there. Okay, now, because this conference is also solopreneurs. And I said, now go and rank them on who you think has the most understanding of a solopreneur. And it ranked them. I said, okay, now create a composite score. Now rank that. So your same scoring algorithm that you were describing, I'm kind of giving it to the AI to do that. I found that there are multiple times where I've disagreed with the score, but not by much. I would say on average, across the whole, it's been very good at scoring. And the thing that I've noticed is that its capacity for multiple comparisons, like the 8 or 9 that you were describing, the AI's capacity is way bigger than mine. And then what I'll do usually is I'll go in, I'll say, okay, now all of those columns that you've come up with, are there any that I haven't considered? And it'll come up with another category that I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a good category. And they'll be like, okay, now make another table, put all of those categories in it and rank them on the level of importance. And let's come up with some sort of multiplier so that we can get a composite score that, really gives us some idea of what's going on. Now do the composite score. So that whole conversation, I'm actually coming up with some really cool ranked lists. And one of the things that's interesting is I was trying to come up with a name for a new way. Like I'm trying to come up with an acronym for delegation, because that's what I'm speaking on. And I want to come up with something that like rings true, is catchy. One day I want to write a book. We're going to get to that in just a second. It comes out and spits out this ginormous list of acronyms. And that's one thing I've found that's fascinating. The thing is so good at acronym building and writing. I mean, it's really, really good at that. It comes up with one that I really liked. And I was like, okay, that's good, but I'm not going to introduce my bias to it, that I like it. Now go and rate all of them. And it rates all of them. Okay, now give me the one with the best score. And the one that I really liked actually matched up with being one of the better scores. And I was like, okay, cool. I've confirmed my bias, or, gone in and understood a little bit there. Have you played that way at all with AI yet?
Yes, I've had it create some formulas for me. It's funny. So one of our services is we recruit 50 affiliates to promote our client's brand or offer 50 weeks in a row. And
Cool.
I was trying to figure out what the total number of impressions were and the total number of people reached and how many times they were reached, how many times they saw the message. And I built this massive Excel spreadsheet to figure it out. And it came up with an all manual labor, and it came up with a number. And I didn't know if it was right. So I asked ChatGPT, just for the heck of it, hey, this is what I'm trying to figure out. And it spits out the number, and it's the same number. And I said, okay, I think that means I'm good. So I was showing it to my wife and my 17-year-old son, who's like a math genius, but I didn't show him the spreadsheet. I didn't show him the ChatGPT answer. I didn't give him the answer. I just said, I'm trying to solve this problem. And I did the spreadsheet that took me an hour. And then I asked ChatGPT and it came up with the same answer. So I think I got it right. And this number is really exciting. And I can't wait to do a marketing campaign based on it. And my 17-year-old goes, Dad, there's an algebraic formula you could probably come up with that would solve that in like 2 minutes. And I'm like, well, you're the one in like AP calculus. Like, I don't know. Tell me. He goes in the house. He grabs his scientific calculator. He comes back 2 minutes in and goes, Dad, I figured it out. I'm like, okay, and he shows me the formula. I'm like, there's Greek letters in. I'm like, I have no idea what that means. And he's like, well, he hits equals and he comes up with the same number that my spreadsheet did and ChatGPT did. And I'm like, how did you figure that out? What the heck is that formula? And hey, can you figure out some other stuff for me?
I love it.
So whether you got ChatGPT or a 17-year-old.
Hey, so if any of you, apparently your son may be for hire for some math to business connections here at 17 years old. Contact Seth Greene if you're interested. So my wife is actually, she has a master's degree in math education. And there have been a couple of times when I've had some business problem that I've come to her and she's done the same thing. Will, like, there's a math equation for that. And I'm like, wait, what? Really? And she's like, yeah, the problem you're trying to solve, we solved like 80 years ago.
Oh my
And we've been
God.
teaching this theory ever since. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to solve the same problem? Reinvent the wheel in my business situation to connect those dots. And I love that you found 3 different places to confirm your equation that you came up with. And I'm curious, do you now go straight to ChatGPT first? Or do you spend the hour on the spreadsheet? What do you value most in your evaluation that way?
Well, this happened like within the last week. Normally, ChatGPT is my thinking partner, first draft thinking partner. Normally, I would not have built the spreadsheet. I just didn't think that it was a question ChatGPT would know how to solve. When I went and finally asked ChatGPT, I'm like, just for the heck of it, let me see. I wasn't expecting it to come up with an answer, and I wasn't expecting it to come validate that I had the right answer at all.
Beautiful. So I have found that simple assumption, I bet ChatGPT can't handle this, has stopped me from several different things. And so I'm now challenging that assumption internally constantly. Like, I should probably just think through that. And I love what you said. ChatGPT is often my drafting partner for my first draft of ideas. My rubber duck text back to me, it's called ChatGPT. And it gives me ideas as I'm kind of connecting those different pieces. I found that when my rubber duck is akin to Data from Star Trek and has access to the whole internet in its brain, its answers are honestly much better, I've found, than the rubber duck, because the rubber duck still has only access to my brain. Right. And so I agree, that iterative process. And I'll tell you what, I cannot beat the $20 a month that I pay for ChatGPT 4. The thing, I mean, if we calculated that down to the hourly rate I'm paying for that thing to sit around and wait for me to have a conversation with it, unbeatable from that standpoint. Okay, coming back around to the book idea, do you have a similar spreadsheet where you rank against ideas for books? Because it sounded like you had an opportunity to write 9 different books.
I have written 9 and working on number 10. And we also own a publishing company because we publish about a book a week for our clients. So that kind of helps.
Okay. Oh man. Yeah. The publishing company definitely makes it a little easier to connect those dots. Tell me about, as you've gone and tried to decide. Now, did you publish your first book, or was somebody else the publisher there?
No, I published every single one of them. When we started, we were producing enough in the affiliate recruiting process. There is a weekly podcast and there is a book. And when we kept having to when we got to the book phase, we were like referring out all of these books. And I kept saying, we're giving money away. We should just start a publishing company and produce it, figure out the process and do it for our clients, which became business number 4. Nice.
Okay. So as you began to dig in further there, you realized, man, there's a real opportunity here. And did you, as you looked at those different books that you wanted to write and connect those different dots, was the idea of writing the book more to get the word out about a new concept? Or was it more about having the credibility to be able to say something like that on a podcast like you have today, where, I've written 9 books? What was the main motivation?
Every book I've written was to serve as lead generation for our businesses.
Beautiful. And lead generation from a standpoint of individuals reading the book and then recognizing, holy crap, this is more than I want to figure out on my own. I'm going to reach out to Seth and the team to figure this out.
Pretty much, yes. It was, wow, that's an awesome idea. I want help with that. Or I tried to do it myself and realized how much work it is. I want help with that.
Interesting. And so as you dug into that, you found more opportunities to connect those different dots and help more people in those different pieces. So I don't think you answered. Do you have a list of like other books you're going to write where you're ranking them against different ideas? Or is that just on your normal, the other spreadsheet that's got those 8 or 9 metrics?
No, I don't have a separate one for books.
Got it. Do you have any books on that list?
Book number 10 is on that list.
Beautiful. And when is it time to decide to monetize mental capital in that way? if you were to toss that out to an e-commerce seller who was kind of considering that idea, what would you say is the piece that should adjust your thinking around whether or not that's a good idea?
I would either rank it. I mean, why wouldn't it be? I think you'd be harder pressed to come up with a reason why you shouldn't do it than why you should. And there are way more reasons to do it than to not do it. And yes, I would rank it on my normal idea matrix.
Okay, cool. And how long are the books that you're writing usually?
I've got two different types of books for me that are lead generation. I've got what I would call a book that's like 150 to 150 pages. It's quote unquote a real book. And then I write a lot of mini books that might be like 30 pages, which, hey, go get on Kindle for $1 or buy on a website for $1 and teach you enough that you learn something and you were happy about your dollar, but get you to go, man, I want to learn more about this.
Interesting. And so as you dug into the idea of writing that book, it sounds like you've got some that are shorter and some that are longer. Is this all a conglomeration of like your knowledge, or are you packaging up knowledge that you've gained from other people? Do you have researchers that are helping you put more information into other pieces, or what that look like?
So yes to my ideas, yes to researchers, no to other people's content.
Okay, got it. I'm a huge fan of Entrepreneur's operating system, the EOS framework, and one of the things you guys
we run on EOS.
Love it. And I'm finding that that's more and more common. I'm finding more and more people who are using some form or fashion or combining that with 40X. Have you heard of 40X yet? 4 Disciplines of Execution.
No.
It's one that's more local here in Utah. I think because the researchers who put it together. So Stephen R. Covey's son is one of the guys that helped put it together. And I've actually found that the cross play between the two, 4 Disciplines of Execution and EOS, has been the perfect mix for us. EOS does a fantastic job of laying out rocks.
Yeah,
I have found if you include the 4 Disciplines of Execution in the way that you implement rocks in the business, it's actually a much more effective way to manage towards rocks. I've had issues with companies where the rate of completion on my rocks is still pretty low, even several months in on different companies. And applying 40X principles, 4 Disciplines of Execution, to that has been a really cool mix up. So just wanted to toss that out there that I love. Always trying to share when I find a good idea. So backing up to that, the reason I brought up EOS is one of the things that I like about that book is when they introduce different principles, one of the first things they say is that we don't own every idea that we put in here. In fact, a lot of what we've done is taken what we see out there as best in class and put them together to create the right system. And I believe they've even, they mention Getting Things Done by David Allen or different other systems out there to kind of conglomerate. When you write your books, do you do that as well? Or like you said before, it's strictly stuff that's coming out of my brain / research in trying to look at some of those different pieces?
It's stuff that's coming out of my brain.
Interesting. Very cool. Very, very cool. Are the books money makers at this point beyond the lead gen aspect of it? Or is it mostly at this point, the way they're money makers is the lead gen?
So they do. That's because over the last 17 years, my reputation in the online space and following has grown enough that we can make some money selling actual books. However, I would still say the money I would make selling a book on Amazon, even if you made $10 a book, $15 a book, is always going to be completely dwarfed and be a tiny, tiny sliver of what we make, because we had someone who read the book and, then hires us for a 6-figure contract. So I'm not Stephen King, right? I'm never going to sell that many books, and that's going to replace that. To me, if it didn't hurt to just give them away, and it's better to actually have someone vote with their wallet and give you some amount of money, I would give them away to get more people, because the cream is going to rise to the top, and that's ultimately what we're in it for.
Interesting. And if I'm wanting to get out today and monetize some mental capital by writing a book, what's my first step?
Figure out who your target market is. That'll affect 50% of the success or failure of whatever it is that you're doing. It's the most important decision.
Okay, so once I've decided who my target market is for that book, then am I making an outline and beginning to capture and store the ideas in a Google Doc? What do you do next?
If you don't have intimate knowledge of your target market already, I would be surveying them, going in, reading Amazon reviews of other people who have sold things to them. I would be in forums. I would be in Facebook groups. I would be in LinkedIn groups doing research.
Interesting. Understanding intimately what that individual, how they think, what they're thinking, how they're connecting those different dots, all of those different sides of it. After you've felt like you've gathered enough research, and are you like copying and pasting that research into some sort of platform, or how are you, like, as you're gathering thoughts, where are you taking notes on all of that?
Google Docs.
Google Docs. Okay. And after you've gathered enough research, when do you feel like you've found enough research?
That's subjective. It's not quantifiable. It's just practice, and it's okay. Looks good to me. Looks like I've got enough to start writing.
And would you say enough to start writing is the question you're trying to answer in your mind? Like, do I understand this audience well enough?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then once I feel like I now understand how this audience thinks, I then write an outline for the book?
Yes. I mean, I've got to know what their problems are, what their pain points are, what keeps them up at night. I already know what I think my solution is. I want to make sure it's the right one before we invest the time and money to do that. So yeah, I would say outline is the next step.
Beautiful. And that outline, I'm assuming, I mean, you spat out several questions there that I'm assuming that outline is going to cover several of those, what keeps them up at night. There's probably a chapter on that. The different problems they're facing, there's probably a chapter on that. After you've written that outline, do you just set aside time each week to begin digging in on that?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I block it out or it won't happen. My calendar will get taken up with other things if I don't make it a priority.
Yeah. And then at that point, how much time do you spend? And do you write by dictating? Do you have like a ghostwriter that you do a call with? How do you actually get the writing done?
I will either dictate or most likely have somebody on my staff interview me about each topic and turn that into the first draft.
Beautiful. How many interviews before you've got a book?
Probably 12 or 13.
And an hour each, would you say?
Half hour.
Half hour. Okay. And how many chapters does that usually turn into?
Usually each interview is a chapter.
Each interview turns into a chapter. Okay. That gets out of first draft. And then are you bringing in an editor at that point to kind of figure out?
Well, I'm going through it the first time, and then we're eventually a quote unquote real editor will edit it. Yes.
Got it. Man, that's amazing. And then obviously when it comes time to publish, they should reach out to you. Well, if they've got the right category. If someone ran this whole process and they said, hey, I've got the first draft here done, is that the time where your company would get involved in that sort of situation? Or do you want them to reach out at the very beginning? Because you said that you do write books or help write books for your clients, correct?
Yes, we do. So no, we can do everything from publishing a finished work and doing the graphic design, layout, publishing, and marketing to ghostwriting every word of it for you if you want.
Interesting. Very cool. All right. So final 2 questions for the podcast here, Seth. Well, 3 questions. If you could make a phone call back to that 13-year-old, we're going back and we're calling him and we're assuming that he's mature enough to actually receive the advice you're going to give him. Okay. So it's going to sink in, whatever you tell him, and excluding the, invest in crypto or whatever.
Buy Apple stock.
Yeah. Buy Apple stock. Yes. All of those other pieces. What would you tell him that might help him monetize his mental capital more efficiently?
It's going to work out better than you think it is. It's going to be okay. And spend more time working on yourself than anything else.
Spend more time working on yourself than anything else. And what would be the main ways that, so let's imagine I'm him. What do you mean work on myself?
Personal development.
Okay.
Who you are being affects how well what you do works, which is one of my favorite quotes from a book, The $4 Sandwich by Dr. Corey Melnikoff. So okay. I would, whether that's, Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, Brian Widgway, Vern Harnish, whatever you could do to work on yourself will pay off dividends in your business.
Interesting. So personal development books, personal development programs, ways of improving oneself is going to be a multiplier for everything you're doing in business.
Amen. 100%.
I love it. Okay. Final 2 questions. You just stepped into an elevator. The guy next to you says, yeah, I'm an 8-figure Amazon seller. What do you do? Now you got 60 seconds to tell the guy what you do. And then right after that, we're going to ask you for any tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year that have helped you monetize your mental capital. So you just stepped into that elevator. I'm an 8-figure Amazon seller. What do you do, Seth?
We recruit you 50 affiliates to promote your brand or your business every week for a year.
And he's thinking, well, I want 50 affiliates.
Yes, he is.
That was like 4 seconds. I think that might be the record on our show at this point. Okay. And if they wanted to reach out and get in touch with you, Seth, what's the best way?
Email Seth at marketdominationprogram.com. Just mention that they were on your show. And am I allowed to give something away?
Absolutely.
If they want a free digital download copy of my book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, Turn Warm Fuzzy Feelings into Cold Hard Cash, if they go to yourdream50, yourdream50.com/ultimate-podcast-free-book, and I'm sure you'll put the link in the show notes, they can go download a copy for free.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And as you dig into those different warm and fuzzy feelings, by the way, I love that. That's part of why we started our podcast, is all of the warm and fuzzy feelings we get as we connect with these amazing people. Last tip, trick, hack, or book you've come across in the last year that have helped you monetize your mental capital.
There's one every day. What's my last one?
Think back across the last year and think to like the monetization of that which is not physical. So the ideas, pushing at those. Does any pop out as like I should look at this, or I should consider telling people about it?
I would say best book in that department that I've read recently is probably Monetization by Caleb O'Dowd.
Monetization by Caleb O'Dowd. I love that. I have not read that one yet, so I'm going to have to add it to my list. Why that one?
Most concrete step-by-step game plan and ideas that you could immediately implement and see significant results.
Monetization by
Caleb O'Dowd, famous copywriter.
Beautiful. Well, I super appreciate your time today. You've been a fantastic guest here on Monetizing Your Mental Capital.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
All right. Over and out.